I never expected that a quiet afternoon near the hotel entrance would lead to a conversation that changed the way I saw myself. My friend's grandson recognized me first, but what he shared afterward, well, I'm still thinking about it. Before we begin, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from, and if you enjoy stories like this, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. Now let's start. I had just stepped out of the hotel lobby, hoping for a moment of fresh air after a long day of meetings. I'm in my mid-50s now, and moments like that, simple pauses, mean more to me than they used to. The late afternoon light brushed against the pavement, and the breeze carried a hint of pine from the hills nearby. I leaned against the railing, letting the hush of traffic settle my thoughts. That's when I heard someone say my name, gently, almost cautiously. I turned and saw a tall young man walking toward me with that unmistakable expression of someone trying to place a familiar face. When he got close enough, he smiled, and suddenly I recognized him too. Even my friend Marlene's grandson. I hadn't seen him in years, not since he was barely out of high school. Now he stood there, clearly grown, steady-looking, and warm in his manner. "I thought that was you," he said, stopping a respectful distance away. "Grandma always said you traveled a lot, but I never expected to run into you here." I laughed softly, surprised by how natural it felt to speak with him. Well, the world has a funny way of shrinking when you least expect it. We talked for a moment about his grandmother, how she still spent her mornings gardening, how she hadn't lost her sense of stubborn optimism. As he spoke, I noticed how he chose his words carefully, not rushing, giving space for each thought to land. It made our conversation feel unhurried, even comforting, the way old friendships sometimes feel even when they involve new faces. But then his expression shifted slightly, not to anything alarming, just thoughtful. He looked at me with a sincerity that made me pause. "I hope this isn't strange to say," he began, "but Grandma used to tell me stories about you, how you helped her through some tough times. I guess I always appreciated you from a distance because of that." The honesty in his voice caught me off guard. I wasn't used to being seen that clearly, especially by someone younger, someone who didn't owe me any kind of admiration. For a moment, I felt a gentle warmth rise in my chest. Not romantic, not dramatic, just human. The kind that reminds you that the past you lived quietly still mattered to someone else. "That's very kind," I said. "I never did anything special. Just tried to be there for her when she needed it." He shook his head softly. "Sometimes being there is the most special thing someone can do." Something about that touched me unexpectedly. Maybe it was the simple truth of it, or maybe it was the way he said it without any agenda. It felt like a reminder I didn't know I needed. A group of guests passed by, pulling our attention back to the present, and I took a slow breath. I realized then that this unexpected encounter might end up meaning more than a pleasant surprise. And it was only the beginning. The breeze shifted as we walked a few steps away from the hotel entrance, giving us a quieter corner near a row of potted palms. I didn't know why, but something about the moment felt gently suspended, as though the day had paused just long enough for the two of us to settle into a conversation neither of us had planned. Even asked if I had a few minutes, and his tone was polite enough that I didn't feel any pressure. I nodded, curious about what had brought him here of all places. He told me he was in town for a small conference related to his work, something involving community outreach programs. I listened, noticing the way he spoke with a kind of quiet conviction. It reminded me of his grandmother, how she always believed in helping people without making a show of it. As he talked, I found myself relaxing more than I expected. There was something steadying about being around someone who didn't rush their thoughts or try to impress me. His presence felt familiar even though we barely knew each other as adults. It was as if the memory of years past created a bridge between us. After a moment of comfortable silence, he glanced at me in a way that suggested he had been carrying a question for some time. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Something a bit personal, but nothing inappropriate." I nodded, unsure where this was going but trusting the sincerity in his expression. "Grandma always said you were someone who understood people, even when they didn't understand themselves," he said. "I didn't really get what she meant when I was younger, but now I think I do." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "Have you ever had a time in your life when you felt like you were standing between who you used to be and who you're supposed to become?" His question surprised me, not because of its depth, but because it mirrored a feeling I hadn't dared to voice aloud. For a moment, I found myself thinking about the last few years, the quiet shifts in my life, the subtle changes I hadn't shared with anyone. I wondered if he could see that in me somehow, or if it was simply coincidence. "I think many people feel that way," I said softly, "especially once we reach a point when life isn't just about responsibilities anymore. It becomes about meaning, about understanding ourselves again." He nodded slowly, as though my words confirmed something he had been trying to figure out on his own. "I've been feeling that lately," he admitted, "like I'm stepping into a new chapter, but I'm not sure what it's supposed to look like." There was a quiet vulnerability in his voice, not dramatic, not heavy, just honest. The kind of honesty that draws people closer, not out of sympathy but out of recognition. "I don't think any of us really know what the next chapter looks like," I said. "We just know when the old one doesn't fit anymore." He smiled at that, a warm, grateful smile that reached his eyes. "You say things in a way that makes everything feel clearer," he told me. "I can see why Grandma valued you so much." The compliment caught me off guard. I'm not used to being spoken to with that kind of earnest appreciation, especially from someone his age. It made me feel seen in a way I hadn't expected today, maybe in a way I hadn't expected in a long time. A car pulled up in front of the entrance, momentarily breaking our conversation with the sound of its engine. But neither of us moved. The quiet between us settled again, not awkward but thoughtful, carrying the sense that something meaningful had begun to unfold, gently, naturally, without either of us forcing it. And even though I didn't fully understand it yet, I knew this moment was leading somewhere I hadn't anticipated. We walked a little farther from the entrance, settling near a bench shaded by a large oak tree. The late afternoon sun filtered through the branches, scattering soft light across the walkway. It gave the moment a warm, almost nostalgic feeling, as if time had slowed just enough for both of us to breathe more deeply. I sat down, and after a brief pause, Even joined me, leaving enough space to keep everything comfortable. His posture was relaxed, but there was a thoughtful weight to the way he folded his hands, as though he was carefully considering what he wanted to say next. "You know," he began, "when I was younger, Grandma used to mention you whenever she talked about the people who'd shaped her life. I didn't really understand what that meant, but now that I'm older, I think I finally do." I turned slightly toward him, curious but not wanting to interrupt. "She used to say that you had this way of helping people feel steady," he continued, "not by giving answers, but by reminding them they had their own. I always wondered how someone could have that kind of influence." His words stirred something inside me, something that felt equal parts gratitude and humility. I'd never thought of myself as someone who shaped lives. I had simply been a friend, someone who listened. But hearing that it had mattered, that it had stayed with her family, was unexpectedly moving. "I'm not sure I deserve any of that," I said with a small smile. "I've always just tried to show up when I could." "That's exactly it," he said. "Most people don't show up. Not really." The sincerity in his voice stayed with me. There was no flattery, no exaggeration, just honesty. I realized then that he wasn't just revisiting memories of his grandmother. He was trying to understand what it meant for himself. A quiet moment passed before he spoke again, this time more carefully. "Can I tell you something personal?" he asked. I nodded, sensing the importance of whatever he was about to share. "I've been feeling a little lost lately," he admitted, "not in a dramatic way, just in that quiet, everyday sense. like I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but something is missing, and I can't quite name what it is. His voice held no complaint, only reflection. It was the kind of confession people usually keep tucked away, the kind they only share when they feel safe. It struck me that he trusted me with this, and the thought filled me with a gentle responsibility. I think a lot of people feel that way, I told him, especially when life gets full. When there's work, expectations, routines. Sometimes it's not that anything is wrong. It's just that we forget to check in with ourselves. He looked at me with a quiet intensity that wasn't intimidating, just earnest. Talking to you. It feels like I'm finally checking in with myself, he said. I didn't expect that. His words settled between us, warm and steady. I felt a kind of connection forming, not rushed, not overwhelming, just honest and human. The kind that grows when two people meet at the right time, even if neither expected it. A breeze drifted through the branches above, carrying the faint scent of the hotel's garden. I took a slow breath, letting the moment settle over me. There was something unfolding here, something gentle yet meaningful, and I felt myself leaning into it, not physically, but emotionally, in a way I hadn't allowed myself to in a long time. What surprised me most was how natural it felt, how peaceful, how unforced. And as I looked at him, sitting quietly beside me with that thoughtful expression, I realized that this conversation was shaping both of us in ways neither of us had anticipated. A soft hush settled around us as the daylight began to fade, the sky turning a gentle mix of gold and blue. People walked past now and then, but their footsteps felt distant, leaving the quiet between us untouched. It was the kind of quiet that didn't need to be filled, the kind that lets two people understand each other without rushing. I shifted slightly on the bench, feeling a calm I hadn't felt in a long while. You know, I said, it's not unusual to feel unsure at your age, or at mine. We're all adjusting, all the time, to who we're becoming. He nodded, taking in my words as if he were storing them carefully. It helps hearing that from you, he replied. You speak in a way that makes me feel like things are actually possible. There was something deeply touching about that, something that reached into a part of me I hadn't visited lately. Things are always possible, I said, even when we can't see the whole road yet. For a moment we simply sat together, letting the quiet settle again. The hotel lights flickered on, casting a soft glow across the walkway. A few guests rolled their suitcases past us, and the gentle sound of wheels on concrete stitched itself into the background. Even drew in a slow breath. I didn't realize how much I needed this conversation, he said quietly. Not advice, really, just understanding. I think we all need that, I said. Someone who listens without judging, someone who reminds us we're allowed to change our minds or our direction. When he looked at me again, there was something clearer in his expression, something steadier. You've given me more clarity in an hour than I've managed to find in months. The sincerity in his voice warmed me in a way that wasn't dramatic or overwhelming, just comforting. It reminded me that connection can come in the most unexpected moments, between people who weren't looking for anything